St. Thomas University Journalism and the New Brunswick Beacon present The Basement Files.
Hi, I'm Chris Brooks, and welcome to this week's edition of The Basement Files.
And I'm Patrick Lowe.
I'm Brittany Lively.
And I'm Jessica Christmas. These are our top stories.
A woman is left homeless after a fire. New Brunswickers react to the new budget. Students have mixed reactions after a tuition rebate.
On Friday, the Victorian house was burned beyond repair, leaving a 70-year-old woman homeless. It was discovered after the house was unfixable and had to be torn down. Alex Corbett has the story.
On March 28th, the fire destroyed a centuries-old Fredericton home, leaving its 3 residents out in the cold.
When you got outside, you could see the smoke and the flames from the front of the building. And I knew then it was very serious and that house was not going to make it.
70-year-old Maris Kay Brookland is a resident of the old building. She says community support has been vital in keeping her spirits up.
The generosity of the people around here are making life a lot easier for me.
One of the key foundations of her support was Big Heart Little City, an organization devoted to fire victims. Jason Surrett is Big Heart Little City's founder.
That whole process with working and helping fire victims, we work with in Fredericton specifically, we work with Red Cross, Salvation Army, Fredericton Fire Department, and the Fredericton Anti-Poverty Organization.
And that's one thing about living in Eastern Canada, and particularly a small town. The outpouring of generosity is overwhelming. It really is. Like Killam Properties gave me this space for free for the month of April. And so many groups pitching in and individuals.
Without Jason Surrett's help, Maris Brookland would have had nowhere to go. The Red Cross Foundation is only equipped to room people for 3 days at a time.
And when there's a fire and someone does not have insurance and they're not on social assistance, essentially, without any of us, they would be left homeless if they didn't get any support. And so for us too, we work with Killam Properties. We've seen what kind of roadblock we were going to have to try to find her a place very fast. So what they agreed to do was put her up into a furnished apartment, and that will give her time to be able to, for them to find her an apartment that meets her budgetary and her disability needs. And then that way the family and friends can help with getting donations brought to her new apartment too. So that gives her about a month to get things figured out for herself.
Maris wasn't the only one who lost a home. Jim Anderson and Carol Forbes have lived in the building for 3 years. They're temporarily living in the Quartermain house. Carol was on vacation to New Orleans when she got word of the fire.
I had just spent a lot of time with people that had rebuilt their lives after Katrina, and I had taken the tour, and I really believed that I was protected in finding out the information in a slower way. I talked to Jim, and he was alive, and Kay was alive, and the cat was alive, and Deborah Quartermain has been unbelievable in the Quartermain house. She is a really good friend anyway, but it was other friends, Sue Linton and Jim Clark, looked after Jim until I got home, and I'm thankful for that. And now one of my students has given us a place for 2 weeks that we can be alone and figure out our life. But our biggest need isn't stuff. Our biggest need is to go see our family and our kids. And so that's what we need.
Because there was no loss of life. There was no injury to anyone. There's no one lying in the hospital with, 80% of their body with third-degree burns. It's more a sort of a grand inconvenience.
All the residents say their lives have been shaken, but that they're glad they haven't lost anything they can't replace.
It hit me more today than...
Yeah. There's a realization that it's just stuff.
Yeah.
It's just stuff.
Investigators found that the fire was likely started in the kitchen. Something left on the stove lit and spread to the rest of the building. The owner wasn't able to save anything, but Maris Brookland's son-in-law was able to save several items of sentimental value, as well as some small deposits of cash.
Anderson has insurance, but until that gets settled, they won't be making any concrete decisions anytime soon. For Stu Journalism, I'm Alex Corbett.
Many New Brunswickers are anxious about what this year's budget will mean for them. From increases in senior care to an increase in the gas tax, this budget continues to draw its fair share of criticism. The public is worried and the opposition is out for blood. Jordan Gill has the story. Jordan, what exactly is in this year's budget?
Well, the Liberal government has been sending out trial balloons for the past few months, many pointing to a tough and lean budget. Now, it's not as bad as it could have been, but that's probably little consolation for New Brunswickers who are impacted by this budget.
Government motions for the ordering of the business of the House. Recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance.
A supportive Liberal caucus stands behind Finance Minister Roger Melanson as he tables his first budget as minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move the following resolution, seconded by the Honourable the Premier.
Melanson's budget was one of mostly service cuts with some increased taxes. The fuel tax will be increased to 1.9 cents per litre for gasoline and 2.3 cents for diesel. The government is also closing courthouses in St. Stephen, Grand Manan, Sussex, and Grand Falls. Drug insurance premiums will also rise for seniors covered under Blue Cross. The government is also removing ambulance fee waivers for New Brunswickers without private health insurance. Seniors will also have their fluid assets taken into account when applying for long-term care. That's not all. The government is removing the maximum charge cap that nursing homes can charge. Currently, the cap is set at $113 per day.
It'll affect the middle-of-the-road seniors that have a little bit of savings, that maybe wanted to do something for their children or their grandchildren, because the government will now take that into consideration.
Marty Hood is the owner of the Gagetown Special Care Home. While this change will not affect his business, it will affect his residents in the future.
But all of our clientele are headed towards the nursing home. So they're all worried about it, as are their families. So we've got many phone calls already.
Hood says that he worries that having fluid assets as a part of the long-term care assessment may increase elder abuse.
I think you're going to see families almost bully mom and dad or their grandparents into signing over the house and the land before they get to the nursing home stage, which in turn could lead to more and even more severe types of financial senior abuse.
Small town New Brunswick was hurt in this budget as well. St. Quentin, St. Leonard, Port Elgin, Hopewell Cape, Gagetown, and Macadam will lose their Service New Brunswick locations. Mike Blaney is the mayor of Gagetown.
For a small community, losing the service is another one of the proverbial nails in our coffin. When it comes to a small community such as the village of Gagetown, there is not a great deal that we have that's positive that we can build upon.
Teachers are also on the chopping block. The government will cut 249 teaching positions. They say most of the cuts will be done through attrition. The government points to a 20% drop in enrollment since 2000. Peter Fullerton is the president of the New Brunswick Teachers Association.
I see this as the Liberal government trying to balance or starting to balance the budget on the backs of children of New Brunswick, on the students. 249 teachers is certainly going to have a negative impact on the educational system.
The government says that about 200 teachers retire per year, so only about 49 teachers would lose their jobs. Fullerton says it's not just about the loss of teaching positions.
It's the effect on the educational system that is important. There are going to be 249 positions not filled, and it is an attack on the educational system. It's not a concern over the teachers, really. It is what is going to happen to the educational system here in New Brunswick.
Some see this budget as more about politics than economics. Blaine Higgs was the finance minister in the Allward government and is a finance critic for the opposition. He calls the budget a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Because they promised just under $2 billion of new spending in over a 6-year period in the election. And as a result, they have to find that money somewhere. And the only place to find it, because our economy is slow and there are a lot of big projects on the horizon, but they're not coming to fruition in the next year or two, in order for them to find the money, they have to make serious changes and cuts in programs.
This isn't the only budget New Brunswickers have to worry about. The federal government is releasing their budget on April the 21st. Now, they promise a balanced budget, however, it's not sure how this balance will be achieved. In terms of the New Brunswick budget, the Liberals hold a majority in the legislature, so there's no doubt that the budget will pass. For St. Thomas Journalism, I'm Jordan Gill.
Cancer is a word that many don't want to hear. Not only is it physical pain, but can be costly as well. Many Canadians cannot afford the medications and the treatments that come with cancer, as well as the traveling costs. The Canadian Cancer Society devotes their time helping those with cancer afford the treatments. Kenyan Marcelin talks to a family dealing with cancer, as well as the Canadian Cancer Society.
He likes to sleep at me when I'm not feeling well, so.
Kevin Smith was diagnosed with cancer in November of 2012. Although it is a physical pain to have and can be very tiring, Kevin doesn't let it affect his everyday life.
Which I like to hunt, fish, go for a walk with the dog, you know, do stuff around the house, things like that. Go to the camp, go kayaking, ATVing. The only thing is now that I have to deal with energy management.
Cancer has proven costly for Kevin. However, he's fortunate to have medical insurance. He still has a fair amount to pay, but not everyone with cancer is as lucky.
I've been fortunate through my work. I work for Department of National Defense on CFB Gagetown in the forestry section. And I'm lucky enough because I'm a federal employee, I have a really good healthcare program.
I started wearing it when my mother was diagnosed. At first, I felt very alone, but then I started noticing others. Now, I see them everywhere, and they understand. We're in this together. We're fighting cancer together. I wear it for my mother, and now she knows she's not alone.
The Canadian Cancer Society devotes their time helping those with cancer afford their bills by many fundraising events they have. One of these events is Cancer Awareness Month or Daffodil Month, where they sell daffodils and pins to help raise money to find a cure. Along with the Cancer Society, many volunteers help raise awareness. Nancy Jenkins is a volunteer who had her own battle with cancer and knows what it's like to be fighting, and says she never says no to a volunteer job.
Oh, probably I started about 10 years ago. That time it was going door to door, canvassing the neighborhood where I lived.
Since the 1950s, the Canadian Cancer Society's daffodil has been a symbol of strength and courage in the fight against cancer.
For more than 75 years, the Canadian Cancer Society has been leading Canadians in the fight for life. For us, this not only means a commitment to research, but to preventing cancer before it starts, and a promise to improve the lives of those living with cancer until we do. Cancer affects all of us. Tens of thousands of lives are at risk every year, including yours. Cancer is now the single largest killer in Canada and the #1 disease that Canadians fear.
Nancy was one of these Canadians that once feared cancer and still does, praying that it doesn't come back.
It was in 2001. I had a mole on my scalp that was just a mole until it began to change, and that's when I had it examined, and it did have melanoma cells in it. So the mole was taken off, and then the tissue all around it was removed to see if it had spread, which it hadn't. And I had no chemo or anything for that, but to this day I still see the doctor who operated on me once a year to check other places for moles or spots.
The Cancer Society recently started a campaign called #MyDaffodil, where those who have daffodil pins can explain their reasons for wearing it and say who they're wearing it for. They also took their campaign onto Facebook and other social media sites to reach more people. Michelle Savoir is a student at St. Thomas University and has been personally affected by cancer through her relatives. This month, she bought a daffodil to go towards the courageous women who have battled with the disease.
My mom got diagnosed with breast cancer about 5 years ago, and my 2 aunts, I would say about 3 years ago, with breast cancer as well, and just recently my grandma. So it's in the family. There's that one. And there's also that one.
Savoir showed us pictures of her mom that she has hanging in her room and looks at them in times when she herself needs courage. She does feel as though we should be doing more to help the cause.
I think that social media has been doing a really good job, television, the commercials, once again for CIBC and just stuff like that, and Twitter, Instagram, everything's I think pretty much good. But I think when it comes down to people actually doing, like promoting and actually doing, like you're like, oh yeah, like I agree with that tweet, and like you might retweet it, but then to actually go and do like the CIBC Run for the Cure, I think that's the next step for people.
It's the beginning of April, so the Canadian Cancer Society is looking forward to this month and reaching big goals.
So Kenya, what exactly is the goal for Canadian Cancer Society for the month of April?
That's a great question, Brittany. Well, in the Fredericton area, they're looking to raise around $4,000. With $8 per daffodil and $2 per pin, they're hoping to reach that goal.
That's great. I hope they reach their goal and continue to help those in need.
The suggested replacement to downtown Fredericton's Playhouse won't be cheap. The final results of a 2-year study call for a new $40 million building, capable of seating 850 people in its main hall. In addition, the new building would have a second 350-seat space for smaller performances. The study found the current Playhouse not worth renovating. The next step for the project is to secure funding, a goal the City of Fredericton hopes to accomplish by 2017.
This winter, Target announced that all of its Canadian locations would be closed in the following months. But as of last week, Target set the new final closure date to April 12th for all of its 133 locations across the country. In similar news, the Canadian tech company FutureShop announced on March 28th the permanent closure of 66 of its stores and the conversion of 65 of its stores to Best Buys. The company said that 500 full-time and 1,000 part-time jobs will be eliminated due to the move.
A government program designed to put money back in the pockets of post-secondary graduates in New Brunswick has been cut, dissolving the provincial government's main incentive to keep young people in the province. Before, graduates who completed post-secondary education and sought work in the province were rewarded with a 50% rebate on their tuition, with a maximum rebate of $20,000. Sean McCollum has the details.
With the release of New Brunswick's annual budget, many students are feeling left out in the cold. The Liberal government has cut the tuition rebate program. The program sought to eliminate 50% of the debt accumulated during an applicant's time spent at a post-secondary institution. The program was an incentive for New Brunswick grads to stay in the province. Students like Shane Delaney aren't happy.
I think it's not very good. It's hard to keep young families in the province, especially students who are just coming out. They have some type of initiative to finish their degrees here. And I think if you cut that money, they won't stay here.
And Delaney isn't alone. Many took to Twitter to tweet their frustrations. NB cutting the tuition rebate is just another step in the wrong direction, but hey, at least they're consistent. Wouldn't it be great if the removal of the tuition rebate program was just an April Fool's joke? Remember the NB Liberals' election promise to keep youth in New Brunswick? No mention of the tuition rebate cancellation. If you're a young person in New Brunswick with hopes of having a career and living your life in New Brunswick, you should sign. Soon after word had spread about the cancellation of the rebate program, an online petition was started. The online petition holds no legal weight and gathered more than 1,500 signatures in less than 24 hours. Not all signatures were from students, because the petition's statement resonated with many. It reads, "A large number of graduating students leave our province. Many who have chosen to stay in recent years have done so due to the tuition rebate program. This benefit affects individuals and families that are trying to make it in New Brunswick. Removing it alienates them from their integral role in moving New Brunswick forward. Folks like Delaney are still unsatisfied."
It's hard to keep people here. It's disappointing, especially for students who would rely on that money in the future as like a startup to get their lives going outside of school. So I mean, it's hard for people who are getting screwed over by this policy change.
Numerous cases of neglected animals in New Brunswick have caused policymakers to act. With harsher penalties for animal abusers, some Fredericton residents have turned their efforts to the galgo, a breed of greyhound from Spain, often killed before they turn 4 years old.
This is Circe, a Spanish galgo. This breed, related to the greyhound, faces many hardships in its native Spain. Used in the countryside as hunting dogs, their owners, referred to as galgueros, abuse the dogs. Galgueros often keep their dogs in cramped and unfit situations. Kathy Edwards first heard about galgos from the group Greyhound Pets of Atlantic Canada, a Halifax organization for adopting greyhounds. They also deal with galgos and a similar breed, the Podango.
I picked her up on the 18th of December, and pretty much from the moment my eyes laid upon her, my heart was hers.
Bringing these dogs all the way from Europe is a big project, but Edwards says it's a good cause.
Although there certainly are many needy dogs in Atlantic Canada that need homes, the plight of the galgo and the podenco is really quite serious.
This video, obtained from SPCA International, talks about some of the ways that galgos are abused.
Keep them alive with barely any water or protection from the heat, to keep them hungry for the hunt. When they are discarded, they are brutally tortured. They are beaten to within an inch of their life.
Galgeros only keep the best dogs for hunting. The remaining dogs are abandoned, or more commonly, disposed of.
If the dog does not perform to the satisfaction of the galgero, the dog is killed. And the way I put it is, if the dog is lucky, they're shot.
For the unlucky ones, their death is an awful one.
The traditional means of killing them is actually to hang them from trees so that they're only able to stand on their back feet, on their tippy toes, and they dance because they're choking, and they just leave them there to die.
In addition to owning Circe, Edwards is a transporter, bringing dogs across the border from the United States that have been imported from Europe.
I meet them in Bangor and take them across the line into Canada, and then from there they either go to a foster home. There might be somebody who has actually pre-ordered this dog essentially on a website, and so the dog has a home already waiting for them.
In Fredericton, Circe is free to enjoy her life. Whether it's outside in the snow or playing inside with a stuffed toy, Circe has a better life now. But Edwards isn't sure if the pain of her abuse will ever go away.
She's opening up. She's really coming around. She's becoming more friendly with people. She's still pretty hesitant around most men. But I do see her playing more.
With websites like Greyhound Pets of Atlantic Canada, or bigger websites like the Galgo Rescue International Network, awareness of the issues of galgos is becoming widespread, and more people are reaching out to help.
Do the people who abuse these dogs get charged?
If someone is caught or gets reported, they can be charged with cruelty to animals, yes, but how they'll be charged depends on how severe the report is, and the abuse is unfortunately very common in Spain.
Thanks, Pat.
St. Thomas University has improved their focus on mental health awareness and will be taking the next step this fall. The Jack Summit is a student-led mental health organization and will be starting a new chapter at STU. Tyson Hovey has the story.
But as the co-founder of the Jack Project, I'm calling on you to give as much as you can this weekend.
The Jack Summit is Canada's only student-led national mental health organization and focuses on bringing awareness to mental health and ending the stigma associated with it. The summit was created in 2013 by Eric Windler and Justin Skaney after Windler's son Jack, a first-year university student, died by suicide. The death of Jack was unexpected and nobody saw it coming. The Jack Summit was created to help bring attention to mental health and to help people realize that they're not alone. In February, the third annual Jack Summit, formerly known as Unleash the Noise, was held in Toronto and saw students from across Canada come together to talk about mental health. In order to effectively end the stigma across Canada, the summit stresses the importance of including students from every province and territory, every culture and background, because mental illness has no boundaries. Olivia Nelson attended the 2015 summit and says having students from across Canada participate in mental health is crucial.
So you have people from like larger cities like Toronto, and then us from New Brunswick, and we're coming together for a common goal. But even though there's a common goal, you can see how different kind of geographical areas go about doing.
Jack.org focuses on young people from different universities, colleges, and high schools across Canada because they believe youth are in the best position to make change. Marc-Andre Desjardins is a fourth-year St. Thomas student and is helping to create the upcoming STU chapter. He views things a bit differently since attending the summit.
I used to think that 1 in 5 had mental illness, but really it's 5 in 5 we have mental health. So it's just really embracing that everyone has mental health and just making it out there that mental health or mental illness does not discriminate.
St. Thomas has focused on mental health in the past, but it's difficult to uphold a club without a concrete idea to back it up. The STU chapter requires a few simple steps, and Jack.org will help support it along the way. Organizers for the STU chapter have various conference calls with Jack.org to help set goals and get things moving. After seeing what the summit has to offer, Nelson says the chapters are a great idea.
But I think getting the Jack chapter in here kind of lends credibility to it. You have kind of an outside source of funding, and they're well established in the area of mental health. So they have these resources that they can kind of pass along to you, and they have initiatives that have worked in the past.
Nate Pearden was a delegate at Unleash the Noise in 2014 and a facilitator at Jack Summit 2015. Now, he's bringing the summit back to St. Thomas as the Jack chapter co-lead.
So I think creating this chapter will help me reach my goals in doing so, as well as engage different students and allow my own passion to shine and bring out the creativity and passion of others and just get people talking to end the stigma of mental health.
Members of the new chapter want everyone at St. Thomas to get involved and promote a campus where talking about mental health becomes an everyday norm.
I encourage people to really participate within the STU community for mental health initiatives. They're not easy to plan and they're not easy to talk about because it's a touchy subject. And I think by talking more about it, it's going to open up and it's going to make it more comfortable on our campus and for people living with mental illness as well.
The summit wants people to get inspired, but to also go inspire other young leaders to make change in their community. Jack.org says it's more than just a conference. It's a student-led movement to change the way that people think and talk about mental health.
You said there have been past attempts by St. Thomas to create other mental health societies. What makes the Jack chapter different?
Well, that's an excellent question, Brittany. St. Thomas has certainly recognized the need for a mental health society in the past. It's just there wasn't really anything or anyone to keep the motivation going. But I think having Jack.org back them, it kind of gives them something that's already credible and well established to hold on to.
That's great. I think we can both agree it's something a lot of universities should look into. So do you think this one is going to last?
Well, all the behind the scenes work is going on right now, and I think after speaking to Stu's own co-leads that it's something that they're really passionate about, so I'm excited to see what the fall has to offer.
Thanks, Tyson.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is being criticized after stating he's against a two-state solution with Palestine before the Israel election, and then backtracking on the statement after he won. The Prime Minister is also being criticized on his increasingly stressed relations with President Obama. Our reporter Joseph Tunney went to go talk to members of the Fredericton Jewish community about whether they are concerned about the future of Israel.
Marilyn Kaufman is the president of the Skulai Israel Synagogue in downtown Fredericton. She sees a difference between her generation and the generation of her children. Kaufman says for younger generations, Israel has always been an established country, but for people with memories that stretch back longer, like her, they remember what Israel had to go through to be where it is today. That's why she sees a real divide in the Fredericton Jewish community over the results of the last election.
Some feel Netanyahu's been in office 3 terms already, and really what has been accomplished. I think you would find others who would feel, as I think a poll indicated in Israel, a majority of Israelis would feel that if you're looking at security, Israel's security, he's the one that you would want to see in the top job.
The United States and 5 other countries have struck a deal to allow Iran to keep their nuclear facilities open under strict surveillance to ensure Iran cannot obtain nuclear weapons. While President Obama has been cited saying this move is creating lasting solutions, Netanyahu says it threatens Israel's national security. Yonah Bob is a journalist for the Jerusalem Post and was in Fredericton giving a speech about the challenges Israel faces. He says this relationship between the 2 world leaders won't be changing.
If the recent months were any sign, I think things are going to continue to be rocky. Things have been rocky, certainly between the U.S. President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu. There's no reason to think that that's going to change in any substantial fashion.
Bob also stated that despite the Prime Minister's statement about Palestine, he suspects it was an election tactic.
So my opinion is that he's still committed to some version of the 2-state solution. What he said right before the election was to try to, which successfully, take supporters from the more extreme right-wing parties into his party, which he did.
Bob said it's unlikely Netanyahu will back out of a 2-state solution since he's been supporting one for the last 2 years. Arnold Chippen works at Chippen Real Estate in downtown Fredericton. He was in Israel a few weeks before the election and says this type of promise is two-faced.
You mean the day after the election?
No.
He basically said, I'm sorry I lied to you?
Yeah. Does that worry you? About?
He is not known in Israel as somebody who tells the truth.
Chipman realizes that any promise made by a politician during an election must be taken with a grain of salt. But a friend of Chipman in Israel said they couldn't see how anyone could vote for Netanyahu if they read Israeli newspapers. But despite his concerns about Netanyahu's re-election, Chipman said he understands how Israel's national security could have turned the tides and stands by their decision.
It's another democracy, and I think the majority of people, whether they like or dislike a leader from another democratic country, you generally sort of accept their decision. And you know that they're not there forever.
Yeah. As for Kaufman, she said the synagogue will still support Israel by buying Israeli products, and despite the strained relations between Netanyahu and Obama, Kaufman said Israel will not be alone.
I think you'll find that in a crisis, the support of World Jewelry comes together behind Israel every time.
For St. Thomas Journalism, I'm Joseph Tunney.
The RCMP arrested another person during an investigation in a Canada-wide prostitution ring that had smuggled more than 500 Asian women into the country. The accused are a part of an Asian-based organized crime ring that operated in Halifax, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Police seized more than $500,000. The question is, what is K-pop? Well, Korean pop is a worldwide trend, and the Korean pop bands regularly sell the most records in the world. In North America, K-pop became very popular because of the song Gangnam Style. But how do the people of Fredericton feel about K-pop?
If you don't know what K-pop is, you might be familiar with this.
Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style.
That's Psy's Gangnam Style, which was a hit in the past few years. It got more than 2 billion views in 66 days on YouTube, which has become popular in North America since 2012. So what is K-pop? It is a musical genre that includes dance pop, pop ballad, electronic, rock, metal, hip-hop music, and R&B. That comes from South Korea. It also features audio-visual elements. Compared to 20 years ago, pop culture has become more focused on the artist's appearance and their performance rather than their music. Yejin is an exchange student from Korea who studies business and English literature at St. Thomas University. She has been listening to K-pop since she was born. Compared with the contemporary pop music, she prefers ballad pop. She gives us a reason why she isn't a fan of today's K-pop.
Sometimes I watch the music show. I cannot understand what are they doing. Like, that is not even music. That is just performance, and they just like show off their appearance and body shape. So sometimes I feel like they are not real singers.
Jimmy Gilly is a communication professor at St. Thomas University. He teaches a chapter based on Korean pop culture in Asia to his class.
I don't necessarily like the sound. I find it incredibly overproduced and this weird mixture of contemporary Western, adult contemporary pop music and traditional Korean music. So I think you have to be a traditional Korean music fan first in order to truly appreciate it. But I think K-pop has a really fascinating history of how this became sort of a cultural phenomenon first in Korea, and then in Southeast Asia, and then sort of internationally with Psy.
K-pop music isn't for everybody, but there are fans who enjoy the music and performances. Some claim that the music easily enchants their mood when they're having a bad day because the music is so catchy and upbeat. Laura McNeil took 1 year off of school and traveled to Korea. Despite the differences between Western and Eastern music, she had grown to love K-pop.
You know, like when you listen to music on the Canadian radio, you just kind of hear the music, like, unless you really, really like the artist, you don't search it up. But I think if not more than half of the experience of listening to K-pop is actually watching them dance and watching them perform, because their performances are amazing and they're amazing at dancing too. Like the people who are in K-pop actually train for like 10 years plus. So yeah, it's amazing to just watch them all together. They're in sync, they know what they're doing. And yeah, even though no one like actually understood what he was saying, it was like, he was just so good. So I feel like you don't have to like understand the music to appreciate the music. Compared to like Western music, I know that's also like worldwide, but it was like a huge step for K-pop too.
Wombo Shim is in his third year at St. Thomas University and is majoring in media study. K-pop music relaxes him from all of the pressure he has to deal with.
Korean pop music lyrics is almost about love. So I don't know, when I listen to K-pop, I always think about how to say, it looks like my story. It's misconception, but I just fall in love by myself. I just remind myself, and when I listen to K-pop, it makes me feel happy and makes me relaxed and calm down.
North American artists are bigger in Korea than K-pop music in North America. North American genre artists influence K-pop music. Will K-pop music take the advantage of Gangnam Style's popularity? What will be the next big trend from Asia to North America? For Stu Journalism, this is Ethan.
A contract has been awarded to build a new federal payroll center in northern New Brunswick. Prime Minister Stephen Harper announced Thursday in Miramichi, where one facility will be responsible for consolidating the public services payroll system in an effort to save money. Harper said the Federal Payroll Center will provide services for employees in 46 federal departments and agencies.
Thanks for watching this week's Basement Files. That's it for this year. Bye.